Oops, I'm going to put somebody on mute. Hi, everybody. This is Heidi Pickman from CAMEO. And let me just put my video on so you can see them actually a real person in line. Good to see all of you here. Lots and lots of familiar faces. Hello, hello, hello. And welcome to this is actually, if you guys remember from last year, a third Thursday webinar on the second Thursday, taking a little bit of liberty with our COVID schedule here. And we're really excited to present what powerful data can do for you. It is basically going to be lessons learned from the WBCs Measure Up project. They've done tremendous work this past year with a PRIME grant that partnered with CAMEO and the WBCs, and we're really excited for it. And so with that, I'm just going to give a couple of Zoom details, although you're probably already pros at this. Basically, all your audio is muted. You can, if you want to talk, we're happy to have you talk. You know, we like participation. You know where the mute button is. Somebody just joined. I'm going to just, if you could please mute yourselves. That'd be great. Your audio should be muted. The mute button is the bottom left corner icon on your screen. If you take your cursor to either the bottom of your screen, some people have it at the top, so you can take it to one extreme or the other and to find your mic icon. You'll also find the chat box. And then the other little piece, if in case you wanted to see the speaker, in bigger view, because I know you guys all want to see my smiling face. I know you do. You can go up to the top of your screen where there's the little bar that says you are viewing Melissa May Cruz's screen, and then there's view options. If you click on that, there's a side-by-side mode option, and when you click on the side-by-side mode, you'll see the titles as well as a whole bunch of all the videos of people on the right. I am going to mute everybody. I don't know who's talking. You can actually make the slides bigger or smaller and the speaker bigger or smaller depending on what your preference is. If you put your cursor between those two screens, you'll see two little parallel bars kind of in the middle, and you can drag that, click and drag that to the left or the right. Great. We're recording. You're going to be free to share. We'll make sure that we'll send you all a link as soon as we can, usually within the next couple of days. It'll also be on our website, and we're happy to do today's slide. Melissa, next slide, please. And we want to thank a lot of people contributed to this project. So we're really, really grateful to Union Bank and the Small Business Administration for funding, as well as the wonderful participation of all 14 California's Women's Business Centers. I know a lot of you are on the call today, so thank you. And as well as the Association of Women's Business Centers, the National Association. So next slide, please. Well, we've done the welcome. Hello, hello. If you want to type your name and your organization into chat box, that would be really helpful for us to see who's there. We're also going to go over in just a second the project and purposes and what the purpose and the results are of this project, what were the lessons learned and what are the great things that came out of it, and that we're going to see, hear from the network and present what we're going to some next steps. And then, and if there's questions around, you can keep them going during the meeting if you have clarifying questions, and we can have some discussion afterwards. And with that, we're going to go to the next step. Next slide. I am pleased to introduce Marian. Marian, I did mute you for a second there, so let me just make sure you're unmuted. Marion.
I unmuted
You
myself.
unmuted yourself. I just want to make sure. Marion managed the project for us, and she's the principal of Marion Dowd Consulting. Marion, take it away.
Thanks so much, everybody. It's wonderful to be here with you. And thanks particularly to CAMEO, Heidi and Carolina, for the opportunity to contribute to the very, very important work that CAMEO and CAMEO members do. We've had an amazing year in so many ways, risen to the occasion. This Measures Up project, I'm pretty confident, has helped people rise to the occasion in a way that we really didn't think was coming, that would be needed. So these times are times where we really need unprecedented community resilience, hope, actually, and action. And what I find is that the WBCs are at the epicenter of doing that at the community level for our economic well-being, particularly in quote-unquote disadvantaged communities. So thank you so much for that. Next slide. I'll be going over the purpose and the process a little bit, and then the results, some of the higher level results of the project. As you can see here, the main purpose is to increase everybody's capacity. So what I do as a consultant is called capacity building evaluation. And so what we're doing is meeting organizations, and WBCs in this case, where they are, and building the capacity to have powerful data to make client outcomes more powerful, hopefully, and understand what's happening with their clients. And supporters as well want to know. I think we're going to pause here for a quick poll and sort of see who's in the room. Are you able to do that, Melissa? Okay. Great, so if you take a moment, let's see who's in the room here. And if you'll notice, this is sort of leading answers, as they call it in evaluation. Please check off where you land. And I think it's select all that apply. So go ahead. And just, why are you here today? What brings you here? What motivates you to learn about data during these times of huge challenges? Oh, I have to submit to be able to, I guess, see. Let's see. Are we able to see the results? Oh, it's actually one choice, says Melissa in the chat. Okay.
Yeah, we still have about 30% of people we're waiting on.
Okay, great. Yeah, pick one that rings true, closest to your heart. What brings you to the room here? It'll help us understand too who's wanting to learn what from this webinar in particular. So. And let me know, Melissa, when you're able to share the results on your screen, if that's possible. Welcome, everybody. Okay, how's it going, Melissa? Okay, look at that. So real-time data is winning the answers here. To better understand, monitor, and tell the story of the scale, target markets, and mission-driven results. And talk about a leading answer. That's the main purpose of this project, to put the data in the hands of those doing the work, right? The hard work of resilience, of recovery, and making a better economy for all. So thank you so much for that. Next slide. How did we do this? We offered the WBCs $2,000 as a boost for their data systems, and many of you spent it on a little more staffing dedicated to data. Some of you spent it on training for in your database of choice. Some of you spent it, I think some of you spent it on things like DocuSign and maybe Tableau, things like that that are really going to boost your system in some way, shape, or form. And you all did some things to get the financing, and that was to put together action plans with a mentor, a peer mentor, very expert mentors from actually around the country, and one from California. We'll introduce them in a moment. And also completed 3 surveys. So there was a pre-capacity building assessment survey back in November, and we just completed one now in September or late August, and also an impact survey, as we called it, which are basically the program and outcome numbers from 2019 that we then turned into one of the results, which are fact sheets, able to use those for advocacy and promotion of the WBCs and the network as a whole. So, and then indeed we've achieved results. Next slide. What a team we had. These women, incredible colleagues, have had decades of experience together as administrators of WBCs, helping boost the impact data for the field as a whole. And Amy, as you can see, is based in another state, but works with Women's Economic Ventures. So thank you, Amy, for all your great work. And Julianne is coming to us from Wisconsin. So thank you, Julianne. And Nancy McLean, who is very much our content specialist, coming to us from New Mexico. So thank you. And we wouldn't have been a team without, the next slide, the WBCs, of course, the staff of the WBCs. You all chose a lead staff person to sort of carry the project and manage it. We did sort of reboot at one point in about April. We revisited the action plans and redid them a little bit in order to really meet you where you were given the COVID crisis that had just started. And now we're going to take a quick look at the results. So thank you, everybody, for your great work. Our outputs, we can't skip that. So as you can see, we had planning, capacity assessment, that was back in November 2019, and then we did a lot of learning by doing, producing the fact sheets for use in immediate advocacy at the state level. We had a deadline. There were some big state level advocacy pushes that were happening, campaigns that were happening. So the WBCs each had a fact sheet, and then the network had a fact sheet. We'll take a look at those in a moment. Then of course we had about 5 months for the action plan implementation with the peer mentors, and it totaled up to at least 70 mentor and WBC meetings and 7 peer sharing special topic webinars to support all the great work on best practices, implementing best practices. Next slide. In their own words, here are some wonderful quotes from the recent assessment survey. Thank you to Renaissance, Ingrid from Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center in San Francisco in the Bay Area, and Sophia from Sacramento. We'll be hearing more from Sophia in a moment. Process matters. I like to say that process is almost our finest product in some cases, right? How we go about this matters. So how do you prioritize capacity building at a time like this? You have to keep it relevant, right? And you can only do that if we're listening to each other and really responding to the current reality. Next slide. Here's one of the results. As I've mentioned a couple times already, this is the fact sheet for the network. When I was brought on in 2019, there was a fact sheet for the network, but the WBCs themselves didn't necessarily have fact sheets for their center. And the way that people were pulling the data and sending it in and everything was sort of all over the map in some cases for specific indicators. And some were missing the data needed to produce something like gross revenues. Some of the WBCs really weren't able to really report that. And so that's part of the reason for this project, really sort of raising the bar and raising the capacity to do that. Okay, next slide. The other thing that we produced is, this was more a process document to help the WBCs zero in on about 35 core key performance indicators for the network to use. It ended up being that we have basic consensus that we're going to be really knowing these for each WBC and the network going forward, with recommended tracking of household income and household size for a reason you'll see in a moment, but really that's going to help us better understand whether we're serving the low income communities and individuals that we're mandated to serve. So next slide. The other thing we produced was, and this got the highest ratings in our recent sort of feedback survey with the WBCs, the KPI guide. And really each of the 35 recommended KPIs have sample questions or tips for collecting the information, and a definition, of course, and then who wants to know, what are the funding sources that require this information, and then anything else that seemed relevant. So it's a fairly hefty document, ended up being 51 pages, but it's indexed, so you can just sort of click through to the indicator that you really need to know more about. So we'll see more of that in a moment too. Next, please. How am I doing for time? Are we good? Okay, great. Okay, a few other things that we used along the way, and mentors had access to these other tools that we shared profusely, I would say, with the WBCs as we went, things like standard data collection forms, particularly because everybody had to go online really quickly, and in Spanish, of course, e-signature policies and procedures that were, and options for products that are, you know, SBA compliant, outcome survey forms and processes that seem to work. Couple cases, WBCs were looking at new databases. They are still working in Excel, and the idea was to upgrade. Okay, next. So there were a number of different goals that came out of the action planning process, and 10 of the WBCs stepped up to really improve their outcome evaluation practices. Doing things like establishing a really complete baseline, not letting somebody start services without completing the required intake form, integrating and implementing outcome follow-up with clients into services so it remains really relevant to everybody, and hopefully makes the WBC staff process even better, more effective, more efficient, that kind of thing, really working it into online tools and things like that, and then training staff. And you're going to see some wonderful examples of that in a moment when we hear from the WBCs themselves. Why do we do this? We hope that we see improved overall response rates and more complete impact data, and of course, hopefully, customer service really improves because people are circling back to their clients and asking, how are you doing? And asking for data at the same time. Okay, next. Here are some of the in their own words, results. You know, you got to have good data to get good data out. Thank you, Chuck, for that. And Kim, you really ran with this improved email to clients and the data collection process. So thank you for that. And we'll see that in a moment as one of the examples that we're going to share. Next. Here are some of the results from our pre and post survey. You're able to see here that that is starting to sort of redistribute from the once every other year, right, over to at least once a year for filling in gaps in outcome data, perhaps. And you'll see that here too as well. It's okay. How staff are really owning it now, right? It's getting integrated in a way that hopefully is relevant to everyone. Okay, great. Yep, next slide. And here we're starting to see the sort of redistribution of the response rates a little bit in the direction we want. And this is during a time when everyone is, as one, I think, meteorologist just said on a news piece that I was reading, we're running a marathon at sprint pace, right? Now we're all trying to learn how to take care of ourselves and connect and slow down to make it really work. But these response rates are actually pretty good for this field. Given everything, it's incredible. And we're hoping that over time, as we all sort of build these systems out a little bit, these will actually redistribute to the higher end of the scale too, over time. Thanks so much. Next slide. The other big goal that people worked on was was improving their database usage and or having one, right? We needed something that was going to integrate well with EDMIS, really make things more efficient and relevant to everyone, and identify gaps along the way so that you have good, clean, complete data. Next slide. You see that here, these are the classic databases that are definitely in use by the field in general and definitely by the California WBCs, NeoSera and VistaShare Outcome Tracker. The big news is that we work very closely with the vendors, right? And we had some nice sort of user groups happen as well to really bump up the training. And as I said earlier, some of the WBCs focused on actually getting more formal training. NeoSera actually came around and implemented a new feature that hadn't happened before, which is the automatic calculation of the HUD and HHS income levels if indeed household income and household size are entered. So that was a big new feature that was a pain for everybody to postcode after, and so held people back, but now they're actually doing it. So more automatically. So to me, you know, this was capacity building in multiple directions. Next slide. And we're starting to see here too, people are getting a little more satisfied. And I think what this really shows us is the learning what you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know until you're really starting to look at it, right? So somewhat, you know, the satisfied folks maybe went to the somewhat satisfied because they have a to-do list. And that is something that we heard in the surveys recently, that you do have plans to continue this kind of capacity building. So next slide. And we're just thrilled that everyone found this beneficial during these times, right? So the work does continue. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to the WBCs to tell their story. And first up, we have Sophia Cannon from as you can see here, the California Capital Women's Business Center. And I'll let her introduce herself more. Thanks so much, Sophia.
Thank you, Marion. Thank you, Heidi and CAMEO and Amy for your mentorship and for the project and for inviting me to speak. I really did have, I had a great time with this project. I saw that the quote that I mentioned before is, you know, reporting has always been my jam. It's something that I truly enjoy. But in order to provide a good report, a thorough report, and in order to tell a good story, you have to collect good data. And so for me, this project was very meaningful and very useful. And so I wanted to also make sure that I expressed our mission as well, because I felt like, you know, a lot of times when we decide how we're going to go about our processes and deliver our services, you know, we always want to make sure that we're going back to our mission, and, you know, that we're making sure that we have the capacity and we have the capital and the capacity to provide their services to serve our communities. And so, as Marion was saying before, you know, this project was meant to increase our capacity, and that was definitely done with this project. So next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to begin with kind of going over our overall data practices. So what we look for when we, or what we do when we are deciding how to collect our data. And really just, it comes down to making sure that we carefully decide what data points to collect. That once we've identified those data points, that we then make sure that those are customized within our SBA approved CRM. We currently use NeoSera, and it's worked really well for us. And through this project, I think that I have really been able to see what NeoSera can do. The way that it can be customized, the features that it has, the ability that it has to communicate with your clients, and to deliver data not only to you, but, you know, back to EdMIS as well. It's a really great system. And, you know, what we also do is we make sure that our counselors, as well as, well, anyone, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, that comes in contact with the client performs an in-depth counseling intake session before we actually get into the weed of our services. And the reason for that is because we really want to make sure that we know who we're serving. And again, this goes back to our mission. We want to be able to serve our communities, but we need to know who exactly is within our community. And the way to do that is to make sure that we're collecting the right demographics. And we're making sure that we're doing almost a double check by gathering whatever demographics we weren't able to collect during the intake session, during our counseling sessions. And once we've been able to do that, we have the ability to share that data back with our funders, our sponsors, and our clients as well through annual reports or just kind of sharing quarterly reports with how we're doing with counseling sessions, or just, you know, being able to share those successes through through our data. It really tells an excellent story. Next slide, please. So before Measure Up, we have our administrative intake intake assistant, and when we were in person, you know, I called that person the gatekeeper. You couldn't get past that person to, you know, get to the training room. They're not literally gonna, you know, talk to you or anything, but you wouldn't get past that person without providing your information to get to the training, to get to a counseling session, or whatever services that you needed to get to, without going to the administrative intake coordinator first. And so, you know, it was really, everybody was familiar with the process, but it was mostly on the administrative intake coordinator to gather that information. And so some businesses, we do have our contact information made available, all of us individually on our website. Oftentimes we get contacted directly and counselors will perform the intake session on their own. That is totally fine. But what happened was we didn't have a formal process. There wasn't a formal, everyone knew how to collect the information, but we needed a standard way of routing folks to our system. And as I said, and at the very last one, not everyone felt comfortable with the CRM. It can, if you're not familiar with it, and if you've never, you know, used one before, it can look pretty overwhelming. There are a lot of features. There are, the font is really small, which, you know, can give folks some anxiety sometimes. I know it gives me anxiety because there's a lot going on the screen. And so, you know, we had 641 forms always available, and that was before. Next slide, please. And so during Measure Up, as Marion had mentioned before, we were given action plans, and we were told to identify goals, things that we wanted to do to improve our data processes. And I don't have our past goals on there before. As Marion said, you know, once the stay-at-home order went into place, our goals kind of shifted a little bit. Our goals shifted in a way that we had to be more, we had to actually tighten our processes a little bit more to make sure that we were really collecting the information that we needed to. And so we went back and we reanalyzed our data points that we wanted to collect, and we realized that there were definitely more points that we needed to collect going forward so that we can better assist our clients. And so we did that. We updated Neosera, and we provided we built a training for our entire staff so that they can become up to date with what the new process for intake was going to be. Not necessarily new, but I would say improved process for that. And so, you know, we really had to reanalyze and implement this process very quickly because we didn't have that face-to-face contact anymore, and we really wanted to make sure that folks weren't falling between the cracks, that they weren't sending an email or trying to reach out for services and not getting a response. And so we had to, again, reanalyze and regroup, readjust our goals, and then implement our improved intake plan, plan. Next slide, please. Okay, and so after Measure Up, which I feel like after and during are almost kind of blurred together in a way for us, as I said, because we had to implement things pretty quickly. And so we immediately communicated to staff that the accountability and the accountability was no longer just on the administrative intake coordinator to collect that information and to make sure that clients were getting routed to our system the right way. Everyone within the organization is now accountable to know that process and to be a part of that process. And so if a client comes to you and says, I need, you know, X, Y, and Z, you know, thank you for contacting me. Here's the link. And we are all giving the same message. We're all sending the same message. We are all routing them to the same place. And we are efficiently and actively making sure that those clients are being contacted within at least 3 to 5 business days. And we make sure that they know that when they sign up to be clients as well, because we understand that their time is very valuable and that getting a response from us is the most important thing. And so that's become a very important part of our intake process is the follow-up communication. Thank you. And so just to kind of cap it off, if there's anything that I can leave you with, it would just be to invest in a system that is going to allow you to not just collect information and organize information, but a system that you can get to know can allow you to give good reports, capture good information, make sure that you're capturing as much information as possible whenever you are with a client, even if it's your third counseling session. There might be more information that you couldn't collect before that you can collect then. And then make sure that all of your staff is trained, they're all on board, you all are on the same page. Everyone's working remote, so communication is absolutely key right now, especially with processes. And so in just a moment, I will show you, I want to just give you a glimpse of an agenda that we had put together for our all staff training. Next slide. Okay, so really quickly, we went over just two main areas. Intake counseling, as I mentioned before, so just kind of going over the required fields, points of data that we have made adjustments to in Neosera, so there's no surprises to counselors. When they go through the process, again, communication for me is very big, and making sure that everybody is in the know. And then counseling assignments and referrals. So kind of going back to, we're very mission driven. And we truly believe that in order to get clients to access capital, you have to truly provide them the capacity that they need so that they can sustain that capital and do what they need to do to be successful with it. And so whenever we are working with clients, we always make sure to identify their end goal. And if their end goal is to grow, great, then we're there with them. If their end goal is to become loan ready, then we definitely want to make sure that we express to them that we have an organization that has a continuum of services, and that we will do our best to make sure that they are loan ready and so that they can access the capital that they need to become successful. And we do that by providing and increasing our capacity to provide services.
Great. Thank you so much. That was an incredible, actually really great illustration of how important this is, sort of that baseline that I was talking about, right? In a way, right? And so really impressive, build out that you've done and training with your staff and everything. Thank you so much for that. I'm sure you're going to start seeing the improvements pretty much right away, right? And it's just
we have.
Yeah, both in customer service and in customer outcomes. So that's the big point here. Next up, I'm thrilled to interview Michelle Skilgen of the Inland Empire WBC with her team as well from the Coachella Valley, Kim Scanlon from the Coachella Valley WBC, and Delissa Barnes, who works with both of them. Do you want to give a quick intro, Michelle, to what you do, and then we'll move on with the interview.
Absolutely, thank you. Inland Empire and Coachella Valley Women's Business Centers, IE was funded in 2003. Coachella Valley was funded in 2006. We serve Riverside and San Bernardino counties, with the Inland Empire office being based in Colton. We also have an office in Riverside, covering the western areas of Riverside and San Bernardino County. And Kim is a director of our Coachella Valley office, which is located in Palm Desert, serving Palm Springs to Indio and beyond. And so our mission is to, we could go to the next slide, please. Oh, let me stop. Okay. I'll get to that mission.
I love this picture. An entrepreneurial ecosystem.
I don't want to forget this. This is very important. So we are part of a university. We're part of a Center for Entrepreneurship, which is at Cal State University, San Bernardino. The Inland Empire Center for Entrepreneurship, you'll hear me refer to it as ICE, was established, I'm going to say back 97, so it's been around a long time. I will share that the Women's Business Center is the longest standing program within ICE. We are in great company, as you can see. We have the two women's business centers. We have implemented a conference called the Prosperity Conference. The SBDC came on board to the Center for Entrepreneurship, I'm going to say 8 years ago, give or take. That might not be perfectly exact, but so that has enabled us to work very well with our SBDC. More recently, we brought on board the California STEP program, which is focused on exports. Beyond that, we have a Spirit of the Entrepreneur Awards that we do every year. There's student fast pitch competitions. We partner with ICE to do some training. We have the Entrepreneurial Technician, Own It, and the Cascade program. They've started youth programs. They have Business Incubator,
Wow.
Business Accelerator, and then the Upstarter Discovery Camp, which is the youth program. Even beyond that, we have the degrees, the undergraduate and graduate degrees in entrepreneurship, both at the San Bernardino campus as well as the Palm Desert campus. And as you can see, there's just so much to the organization. So it's great to be part of such a, like Maureen said, ecosystem.
There's a lot going on, and we just have about 4 minutes left for our little tour of what you did with Measures Up. So I'm going to move us along a little bit, if that's okay.
Okay, absolutely.
So
that's our mission: to counsel, teach, encourage, and inspire women business owners at every stage of development and expansion. Next slide. What we accomplished was, previous to Measures Up, we primarily represented our numbers collectively and cumulatively. So if I could ask for the flyer to be brought up that we created, the Melissa.
Flyer fact sheet.
There we go. We could go down. So this is just a little bit about us. It highlights our 2019 results. And then a couple of fabulous success stories on the back. And we're collective still, we're IE and CV. And I want to give Kim credit for this because I know she put this together. So yay, Kim. And we all know that this is a lot of work to make these happen. So Sonia Stewart is one of our amazing success stories out in Coachella Valley, and Lindy and friends are Inland Empire. So, but this was put together so that we could use this to represent both centers in our visits and as a marketing piece as well.
So let's hear, and how did you end up using this? Kim had some great examples in a recent call. Did you use it with legislators? Did you use it with funders? Go ahead.
We did it with legislative visits. We, of course, we're part of campus, so they help us distribute as well. We had it available in our office as well, pre-remote operations. But yes, we use this in a multitude of ways. And Kim, if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, no, I would just say it came in so handy as a tool, particularly to take to legislators when we were looking for more funding through the state of California, and we wanted to show those the assembly members and the senators, what we've done as an organization. So it became a great tool for that.
Great, thank you so much. Now I'd love to move on to the next document that will help tell the story of how you improved your outcome data collection systems. So Michelle, would you want to explain what this is sort of the before, right?
Yes.
So if you scroll down a little bit, Melissa, that'd be great.
So how we handled our economic impact pre
Measures Up
project, pre-Measures Up project, was that we would do our best to collect throughout the year, but the major push was August, September. Get all that information in prior to reporting time. And this was a tool that we used. We would send this out. It's a fillable form that we would use, and we'd send it out to clients. Primarily, some of the counselors would work on this, but the directors spent a lot of time and effort in this area, as well as Jasmine and Kim, our lead coordinators. Delisa Barnes came on board with us a few years ago, and she has this great how do we do it easier brain, and how do we do it how can we do it easier, how can we do it better. And so if we could go to the next form, she found a program called JotForm, and so we use that quite a bit, and this is set up in JotForm, so it goes out as a link. And so we just took that, we improved the information we're collecting through Measures Up, but this goes out as a link. And we're working very closely with our business counselors because they have the closest relationship with the client. So we're asking them to help us by prepping their clients with an email saying, we're going to send this out. Could you please take a moment to fill it out, just so that, we can document what we've accomplished with you. And so it's kind of that soft introduction to encourage the clients to fill it out. So, and it's super easy because it's all online. It's downloadable into Excel, which is easily transferred into Neosera. And we just couldn't be happier with this document, and with JotForm, which was not a tremendous investment. And we use it for a lot of other evaluation projects as well. And
last but not least, let's go to the graphic. Tell us how you use this, and then we're going to move on to hear how the network is.
I'll wrap this up real quick. And again, Delisa, she kept hearing me say, and that's another thing that changed, is that we're meeting, and this, I'm going to say this is COVID. We meet and chat weekly, whereas before it was monthly. So we're meeting weekly, short, to the point meetings, and we kept talking about economic impact. So before it was monthly, now it's weekly, economic impact. So she took all these conversations and developed this amazing graphic of the 5-point economic impact check. And so we, if you can go down to that's the visual, and then this is the explanation. We'll pop back up, but we just remind our business counselors, because they're working with everybody typically fairly regularly, ask them, have you started your business when they're pre, hopefully not closed, but that does happen, or maybe sold. That's a better one. I talked to a client recently and they'd sold. Have you applied for any funding? Have you invested funds yourself? Because we know all of those count. Have you, where are your sales? Where were your sales? Where are your sales now? Have you had any increases? Have you created any jobs? So just that constant reminder for the clients that you're working with regularly, just ask these questions to keep them, to keep them thinking about it. That helps us stay on track, and that helps the client stay on track too.
Thanks so much. That was wonderful.
Welcome.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Delisa. And thank you, Michelle.
Absolutely.
Next up, we have Nancy Swift, who I will let you introduce yourself. You're the chair of the Network Steering Committee, and work with Women's Business Center at JEDI, and have definitely, I think you masterminded the Measures Up name for this project. So welcome, Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I'm so excited to see all of you who are here. I can tell that among you, some of you are those women's business centers that participated, and some of you are funders, and some of you are interested parties. So thanks for being interested in data collection.
Exactly.
You can see I wear a lot of hats, and I was so excited when Carolina and Heidi said, yep, we want to do a project, and we want to do it specific with the women's business centers, because it was and this was over a year ago before we got the funding. It was just a strategic moment in the development of the 14 women's business centers who are federally designated, but there are 14 in California. And so we just knew we needed to be talking about our impact in California better. And so while Carolina's face first went, data collection? We were really thrilled that she was interested in putting together both the Prime grant and the support from Union Bank. I know Trina's on the phone, so glad to see you, to do this. My part is to talk a little bit about lessons learned, or I'm going to shape that to perspectives from that network. I'm the chair of the steering committee. We do meet, we get together frequently, every 2 weeks, in order to be sharing amongst ourselves as peers, in order to be receiving information from the outside on designated topics. This project was needed. We needed to be advocating, we needed to be able to say who we were. We couldn't have produced that flyer pre-measure up, exclamation mark. And so we needed to get on the same page, even though we all had the exact same federal designation with metrics that went along with it. Now we were also recipients of the state's funding that came out of the governor's office, GoBiz. We needed to be able to tell our story collectively. And as you saw, there's diversity in everybody's procedures. There's diversity in everybody's system. And there's even harder was diversity in terms of what people were tracking. So it was a strategic moment for us. And we really wanted to be able to raise awareness about our collective impact, because we knew the diversity inside of it too. So we needed to somehow be starting to be able to tell that story beyond the 3 metrics that SBA gives us. Well, now that we're working with GoBiz and Isabel Guzman, boy, she likes metrics too. So we're going to tell a lot of the story together. It's an odd project, but as you've heard from both of the presenters already, and a lot of the testimonials that were listed there, they talked about process. It's all about the process after all. So from where I sat, I knew that the Association for Women's Business Centers at a national level had done a project like this. The organization I represent, the Women's Business Center at Jedi, had participated in that. We'd seen great results from that. I knew that's what we needed to, and it had to be a chance for people to get the systems and the investment in those systems. Excuse me, my family just arrived. Go away. Thank you. We needed to be able to help people tell their stories better individually and then collectively. So I was really excited process mattered, and it was really important, and this is a lesson learned as we might try to take this into other arenas, that to have a discrete group of people working together. So we were bound by SBA a little, and we were bound by our state support through the governor's office, GoBiz. That was important, and also to have experts from the field. We did not waste any time when people had questions, figuring out the solutions, making connections with the companies that were creating the databases, having access to those funders and the agencies under which we were operating. Those were all really intentional, and they were key. So Marion put together, first there was CAMEO, strategically placing us on the map in California. Then there was Marion, and then there were the mentors and the experts that have already been referenced. So that was really important. Sophie gave you some examples of very specific kinds of things that she was doing I mean, she was the most detailed about the changes, and she even captured it in Invest, Capture, Train, and she actually did all those things, which is really remarkable. That's a lot of work in 12 months. That was needed. And then through doing it together collectively and we just started to build some partnerships that were advancing the cause for all of us, helping elected officials, helping other corporations and other parties that were interested in the work that we were doing, understanding what we were doing. And again, we couldn't have done that if we didn't have some reason, some collective capacity building project. So industry focused capacity building project just really advanced the cause. The next thing that advanced the cause was advocacy and deadlines. So those really helped us. And this piece, which we continuously refer to, we love it. We're going to keep it updated. Every center's been using it individually, and we've been using it collectively, led to a website, led to, now we could start talking as a network. And so now we're invited to the table. It puts us in a conversation, sometimes with SBA, but more at the state level with how do we want to, what measures, how are we going to collect this data? What is the definition of the data? So it's positioned us as a network really differently too. And we can't stay at that table unless we can answer the questions and respond. So this is a piece in the budget request where we combined research with our collective actions, and we really were able to frame the conversation. And again, each of us is doing that individually to talk about our local circumstances, but what about looking at this on the statewide level? So it was terrific. I do want to say we're really proud of that key performance indicator guidebook that Marian showed you at the beginning. It's like the first time we've had our favorite KPIs all somewhere, all defined, a place we can all reference. But having 35 key performance indicators is, you know, let's not build the over time. We're all going to be able to report on those. Collectively, some of us are reporting on major portions of them. So it is a goal for us, and we have pledged as a network to continue this Measure Up project on into the future in terms of implementing the use of this guide and implementing these great new procedures. I'm pretty certain that everybody on this call is well aware that March 16th or 19th, whichever day you choose, our world's changed as consultants. I mean, we were tracking numbers that are either between 30 and 150% more contacts in a 3-month period than the previous 2 years in some cases. So people were without staffing up. So how do we hold that? How do we make sense of what we're going to do with that? How do we show relevance in the face of a crisis? We are now calling ourselves first responders because we could document that. We got systems in place quickly as a network. We could talk about that. And so we started, certainly in the state of California, talking about what exactly was happening in our communities. And we couldn't have done that if we didn't already have this relationship to understand how important it was to develop a quick new system that we could all share to track contacts, for instance. So we're proud of our relationships, and those, that is, we're hoping and always, that always has a return when it comes back and helps inform the field and the funders.
Nancy, this is Heidi. We have 5 minutes left, and perhaps I'm just going to ask if everybody can, if they still have questions, we're going to invite you to stay on a little bit past the top of the hour if we can. So is that okay with you, Nancy, and Marian and
Yes,
Michelle and Sophia, if people have questions? I just want to emphasize one of the, like, where this project got the WBCs, a seat at the table. That is like huge. we've worked for many, many, many years on working with the WBCs and trying to give them a voice, as we do all of our members. And by engaging in this project and being able to do the collective data and really concentrating on it, it pays off. So I just want to, that's really exciting, or an exciting result. So we do want to open it up for questions. Officially, we have 4 minutes left. So I'm entertain questions. Take yourself off mute, raise your hand. You can use either the little reaction button or just, I think we can go ahead and stop sharing, Melissa, and just kind of put us back on, have more of a conversation, or if people have something to say.
Well, people unmute themselves. I just briefly wanted to really congratulate the coalition for all the effort that they put to get this project done. As Heidi was mentioning, and everybody, we were very excited from CAMEO to be able to support that effort. We are firm believers that we are not showing all the results, the wonderful results that all the organizations in our network are doing. So being able to put the data in a place where we can actually see concrete results is really helpful to grow the industry. And we are very happy to be able to support that with our partners. But the fact that we maybe believed that or wanted that was not only, it was just a starting point, because it came out of your strategic plan. It came out of your work as a coalition. And it is important to note that it obviously you did it as a coalition, but also for the members that we have here that are now part of one, it's important to look into your organization and really try to show those results. So we're very excited to see these results, and I'll just wanted to leave it there. Congrats.
So yeah, we have a couple people. We have Marcella has her hand raised, so I'm going to Marcella. If you want to, you are unmuted. Go ahead, Marcella.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Can barely hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, let me type then.
Yeah. Anybody else? Marcella.
Can you chat?
She's not unmuted, I don't think.
Yeah, no, she's unmuted. We're going to go on, and if you could chat your question, Marcella, that would be great. Ruth, you're unmuted. Did you have a question?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. And so is a 916 phone number is unmuted as well. Okay. While Marcella is going to chat in her.
I have a comment.
Great.
Thank you.
Comment, Ruth.
I just want to say that this was a wonderful experience for us, in the sense of really, it's so valuable to have our data, put in a smart way, because it's just like being smart. Data is going to be as smart as we can put it together. And I think with this project really brought that to our attention. And I just love the idea of having a mentor. I bother her all the time. If I have a question, I shoot her an email. And having a mentor is just such a positive approach of how to handle data. So Amy has been wonderful, and I thank her very much. And Marianne, thank you so much for all the time and effort you've been putting into this project, and Nancy and everybody that has made it possible. It's just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was wonderful. We're thrilled to hear that as well. So there's a couple of questions that Marcella was able to type her questions on. She had 3 questions. After the first touch point at intake, when do you take in more data?
And I responded with, it's kind of a mixture, and it's up to the organization, right? Maybe with more active clients that are still coming in for counseling, typically what we see is indeed in the moment data collection. And then for those that are kind of off and running, and running their business. Well, maybe it's every 3 months or every 6 months, right? With a fallback of an annual survey sometime in the summer, usually, for those that didn't respond during the year. So that's the most practical answer. There's a whole evaluation methodology around outcomes that we're not really practicing. So about sampling and all that sort of thing. But that's another option. Thanks.
Great. And then she also wanted, you answered this question as well. When do you stop collecting data from a client? It's about 2 or 3 years. Sometimes they are done, don't come back for a while. How do you handle that? So
pick up the phone.
pick up the phone.
So to speak.
Yeah. And the last question, is it all self-reported? You asked for proof of documentation.
Yeah, we don't need, unless somebody has CDBG, I'm assuming practitioners are the ones mostly on the call, CDBG, Community Development Block Grants, or some other grant that requires like income documentation or proof, you don't require it. It's all self-reported. So it's, as I said, it's not, you know, very strict research methodology that we're practicing here. It's let's get the data in the hands of those doing the work, and then we can apply those other methodologies later if needed. So it's all self-reported.
Yeah. The same is true in, oh, we have an Marcella, ask away. Is it, oh, no, that was, thank you, sorry. I thought you typed it.
I do want to say that we do use secondary data sources sometimes, like if indeed you're working with someone's financials with them, or you're working maybe on taxes, you see their tax return, you see their Schedule C or something like that, and you ask for permission, you can use that data as well. Right, so there are secondary sources available.
Great.
And also to clarify, that's for technical assistance, because certainly those of you who are doing capital access on
Right.
the lending side, that's a different question.
True, true.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Great, yeah, good questions, Marcella. Anybody else have any other questions or comments they want to make? You know, it'd be, you know, I know be interesting to hear what other people's pain points are who aren't in the project for collecting data.
I'm typing a little question for you in here. For everybody.
I have a question. This is Amy with El Pajaro CDC.
Amy, hello. It's been too
long.
Hello.
How well did you, I mean, what strategies did you use to get buy-in from your staff and consultants?
I'm going to let the WBCs speak to that. You saw one example that
Michelle, did you crack the whip?
Well, I think it's just helping them understand the importance of this data to our ongoing operations. You know, we have to, you know, as grant funded programs, whether it's our SBA grant, whether it's our state grant, our GoBiz grant, whether it's fundings that we receive from our community partners and banks and so forth, we have to be able to report what we've accomplished. And so explaining the importance of that and just talking about how hard we all work and this great, you know, the great accomplishments that we're making, that without the collection of that information, we're not able to share how amazing we are. So just making sure to reiterate the importance of getting that information and to collect it.
Yeah. And I think Sophia, I'll answer for Sophia. I think one of the things that struck out about what she said for me, unless she's, Sophia, I don't know if you're
still on. She's still
on. Was that you shared it with, oh, there you go. There you are. You shared it with your staff, right? Like you train them. The training was,
and I was
the training piece.
And I was just going to say that. Thank you, Heidi. That's what I was going to say. And I think that, you know, I go back to communicating to your staff, to, you know, one, I think, and I know that our staff, we're all on the same page in terms of what we're here for, what our goal is in terms of the mission, but always communicating to them what our future goals are, when the time comes when, hey, we have an opportunity to implement and maybe see those goals through. and then let them know, hey, look, we have the opportunity to do what we've been talking about. Now here's what has been asked of us. Here are the requirements. And so I really feel like keeping your staff engaged and informed with what's going on within your WBC is going to make them feel that much more, what's the word, not in tune, but they're going to feel a part of the process. They feel part of the process. It's part of their responsibility. You know, they have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that we all get these goals where they need to be. It's on all of us. We all have a role to play, and it's very important, but we all need to be on the same page. So I think just communication has been the best way to keep our staff kind of going, keep the momentum going.
Yeah. And you didn't implement the data thing. I like the whole thing where you brought all your staff together and trained them on the training. I think that was a really important key to success in implementing a new program or especially something, you know, as detail oriented as the data collection.
Heidi, I wanted to mention something. This is Norma Dunn at the MCSC Kern Women's Business Center. And you're right on point, Sophia. I think that was great. We did the same thing in Kern County where we implemented a process, an intake process with all the questions. Again, I think that's key, and that's a success of getting the documents that we need and the information to pass on to the consultants. But in addition to that, when COVID hit, we could no longer have our consultant monthly meetings, so we went and did that online. So we now do that via Zoom. But the other thing we did here is we created our not employee handbook, our consultant handbook, and we created it and we went through a training. We recorded a training on an onboarding training. So when we do get new consultants, we go through each document by document, line by line, why it's required, what's the importance of it, and how we use it here. And that's what we do. So when we do bring on new consultants in this COVID environment, again, all the information comes in and then we send them the link. They can watch the videos. They have any questions, they can ask us about it. But I think the more we empower them with why and how we do what we do, the better we get our data. And our scope of work, we require it after every second to fifth session. And so we're continually getting that between 2 to 3 sessions on a continual basis. And again, making sure that we are top of mind with not only that, but with the data.
Awesome. Awesome. Anyone else have a comment or a question?
Part of my philosophy or approach has always been to share data as often as possible, right, with everybody, right, including clients for that matter. You know, so when you do a report for a donor, share it with the staff, right, you know, or have some sort of scorecard or dashboard. And typically what I see is, you know, it bumps up the level of completeness, right, because if their story is not being told of all their hard work, they want it told, right, and so that's one thing that I've seen work as well.
Yeah.
Get buy-in.
I think one of our things that we tried to do a few years ago, maybe we should revisit this at CAMEO, was to, I like what you said, Marianne, about the clients and sharing it with your clients, so they feel like they're part of a larger community and they feel like they're part of, you know, the small business community and not just operating in their silo, and they're also able to tell your story for you, which doesn't often happen, you know, but you know, I think to incorporate some of that. So I like that idea too. Well, it's almost 10 past the hour. If there are no more questions or comments, going once, going twice. Have a lovely Thursday afternoon, everyone. Stay safe. It's kind of icky and smoky out there, at least where we are in the Bay Area. And I'm sure all over the state, we've got reports from up north as well in Oregon, and just be well. Thanks everybody. Thanks to the WBCs. Thanks to SBDC, to SBA Prime, to Union Bank for their generous support of this project. It was a very successful project, and have a lovely, lovely, lovely rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
you.